This is the back side I'm pressing down now, and as I press it down I pull the edges of the paper just to get rid of some of the lumpiness of the crinkles. Press it down thoroughly so that every single part of it is pressed down, and then I trim it. And then I cut off the corners right flush against the edge of the corners. And then I will I usually will glue the edges over, but in this case I started by doing the interior designs first. And what I do here is I cut out the center, leaving some trim that's about 1/4 of an inch wide or less. So I just cut out that interior part. Make sure that you don't cut your fingers. Sometimes I'll use the box cutter to start it, just put a little slit in there so I can fit the scissors in. Now I score all of the edges, and you do this only if there's a curved shape like this, both the concave and the convex contours. And I cut a slit right to the corner there, as you saw, and I'll do it on this corner that's coming up. I just score it all the way, and then cut a slit right into the corner. Then I pre-fold it so it'll fold more easily when I glue it. And then I press them back down again so I can glue them, glue the trim. And when I glue it, I just put a line of glue across all of them quickly like this. And then I use the bottle top to kind of brush the glue on evenly over the trim. Then I pre-fold it again and then press it down. And I press it down so that it's flush against the edges, so the edges will be smoothly contoured. I do that for the entire shape. And it's important to press it down thoroughly too. And then I look at the other side and I just make sure the contours, I kind of press around the edges like that. Now here I've done all of the holes, and then and that's the back side. Now I do the trim. Again, I just put a line of glue across the trim, and then with the bottle cap I kind of brush it on. Now these are pre-folded, so it's easy for me to fold them across, and I press them down as well as I can, squash it down as well as I can, so it's thoroughly glued in place. And here I've done all of it. All of the trim is glued down. Now I do the front side, and here I do the same as I did with the back side, exactly the same. I just glue it thoroughly over every square millimeter. And then I press it on the paper. You see the back side of it right now. I'm pressing the front side against it, the glued side, of course. And again, I pull the edges as I press it down. And then I trim it. I clip off the corners. And now I'm pressing, this is the front side, I'm pressing on the front side this time. I didn't do it with the back side because it wasn't really necessary, but here I want to get rid of all the bubbles, make sure that it's really thoroughly flattened down, but there's still a stucco effect on there. Now this is the back side. I'm now doing that same thing that I did with the holes, where I cut out the center. In this case, this is a narrow hole, so I don't have to cut out the center. I just cut a line through it. I cut right into the corners, and then I start the scoring process, just following the contours. Be careful not to cut cut into the cardstock itself. Just cut the paper. You can see that I'm also pushing up with my finger. I'm pushing that little flap up. And you can do that if you need to cut, if you need to kind of bend the cardstock to do this, you can do that. It's still wet, the glue's still wet, so it'll flatten out later on. Okay, then I pre-fold it just as I did before. And then I'll flatten it down again and add the glue to the trim. Again, I just put a line across all of them, all of the trim, a line of glue, and then I'll use the bottle cap to brush the glue on more evenly. I pre-fold it again into kind of a vertical position before I actually press it down. It's just faster and easier that way, I've discovered. Okay, then I press it all down. Again, flush against the edges. You don't want a jagged edge. The reason I glue both sides like this with paper is because for these tracery designs it creates a kind of a rounded edge that looks pretty professional, and a lot of people can't figure out exactly how I did it. If I just glued one side, the edges aren't as rounded the way the paper is folded over the edges. It's not quite as rounded, so it doesn't look quite as professional, and it tends to be a little flimsier that way too. This way, when the whole thing is dry, okay, now I finished the whole thing. I did the trim, I did all the holes. That's the front side now. But anyway, when the whole thing is done, here I'm interrupting myself. I'm gluing this interior design on the back, and I'm going to fit it onto the front of the tracery design. That's right where it's supposed to fit. Anyway, when this whole thing is done, it's going to be very sturdy once the whole thing dries, and it's going to dry flat too. You can place it under a book